This Shabbos is called Shabbos Shuva, the Shabbos of return, and there are actually some Sforim that refer to it as Shabbos Teshuvah, the Shabbos of Shuva, and there's some very important Sforim that call it that, even though seemingly you would think it's a misnomer, and it was called Shabbos Shuva because the first word of the Haftarah is Shuva, Yisrael, come back Israel. But some Sforim refer to it as Shabbos Teshuvah, and I think there's a very good reason for it that we will explore. That there is a connection between Shabbos and Shuva is quite openly said in a very interesting Medrash Rabbah in Parshas Bereishis. Medrash Rabbah in Parshas Bereishis says that after years of separation, Adam Rishon met his wayward son Cain, and he said, whatever happened to you? You were on trial for killing your brother Hevel. What happened? So Cain tells him, "Asisi tshuva minit pasharti." Look, I did tshuva, and I cut a deal with God, and instead of dying myself, I just have to wander. I don't even have to wander that much, right? Just has to be nud, not navinud. I only have to wander a little bit, relatively speaking. So I did tshuva, and I came out, with a very commuted sentence. So says Arishan, wow, kachi kochash tshuva, that's the power of tshuva. I should have done tshuva after my sin. Pasach va'omar mizmor shir liyom Shabbos. So he opens up and says the famous psalm that we say on Shabbos, mizmor shir liyom Shabbos. So the Medrash begs an explanation. When Adam Rishon learns about the power of tshuva, he says the mizmor shir liyom Shabbos. It's clearly some type of relationship between Shabbos and tshuva. The question is, what is it? What is that relationship that Adam Rishon sees that tshuva is so great? Mizmor shir liyom Shabbos. So this week's parsha is Ha'azinu, and Ha'azinu more often than not is Shabbos Shuva. It's only on the odd year that there's a Shabbos between Yom Kippur and Sukkot that Ha'azinu is, during that Shabbos. But in most years, Ha'azinu is Shabbos Shuva. And the question is why? There can't be a coincidence if more often than not, Ha'azinu is Shabbos Shuva. So now, Ha'azinu is one of these mystical parshas that the whole thing is a poetic song, an epic poem. And the Meforshim all agree this is something that we have across the board in all the Meforshim and all the works of all the Mekubalim, that the Shira of Ha'azinu, the epic poem of Ha'azinu, refers to the whole course of destiny. And every line alludes to a different period in history and another period that is may yet to come. And it ends off, Ru'u ata ata ki ani hu, see that I am the one and only. Ani ha-mitzvah b'chatz b'nei pa b'nei miyadi matzil. I kill, I bring back to life, I smite, and I also heal. No one can save you from me. I am the one and only power. And that's really the end of the course of destiny. The whole course says to lead up to that. By Yomo Yashem Echad Shmochad, on that day we will see that God is one and His name is one. We will know and recognize that He's the only one real power. Right? And this whole poem alludes to the course of destiny that, through the ups and downs of history, the clear conclusion of the whole dialectic of history is that God is the one and only. Right? And then, the Chumash just goes on to say that at that day He'll take revenge on all those who did Him wrong and, stood up against Him, etc., etc. Take revenge on all those who started with the Jewish people. Right? But that's the end of destiny. But that's the whole course of destiny, is to lead up to total tikkun, fixing the world, and God will reveal His omnipotent majesty, and we'll see He's the one and only real power. That's what Ha'azinu is all about. That's really the last parsha of the Torah proper, because that's the conclusion. It's what Torah is supposed to take you to. It's supposed to take you to the end of time. Torah is supposed to be what brings the universe to this clarity of the oneness of God. He's the one and only real power, because the final parsha of Zos Bracha is like Chazal say, it's like the after bracha on the Torah. It's like Moshe Rabbeinu is giving out blessings. It's like the last this parsha is also brought us to be compared, say Chazal, to like the blessings a person makes when he finishes his aliyah, when he finishes reading from Torah. He makes the after blessings on the Torah. That's parsha v'zosa bracha. This is like the last, parsha of Torah per se. The last parsha, the brachas that the Torah makes upon finalizing itself. All right, so this is the ultimate message in Torah that, at the end of time there's going to be total tikkun, and God will reveal that He is the one and only. Okay. So at the end of time, God fixes everything. Right? And this is what the Gemara says in Yuma: Im yuchatechem kashonim. If your sins will be like red garments, kashel galbinu, right? They will be white like snow. So that's a pasuk. And the Gemara in Yuma Darshan, Im yuchatechem kashonim. Your sins will be like red. The Gemara says to learn it kashonim halol, because there's supposed to be if your sins will be like shanim, like years, like these years that are arranged to unfold ever since creation. What does that mean to say? What's the message of the Gemara? That that there's a program for destiny, that at the end of time everything is made good. As the years, play themselves out, and there's many turmoils, but all the years are leading to a very clear, absolute destination of all-encompassing tikkun, that God will reveal His omnipotent majesty and fix everything. And that's what the Navi is saying. Your sins, don't worry about them. They are like the years that are already foretold to unfold, that as those years arrive to the end of time, so everything will be fixed, and your sins will be fixed also. Right? Everything, that all wrongdoing will be fixed. That's the kashel galbinu, right? They'll become white like snow. Right. So the Ramchal points out in Derech Hashem, right, that in the big picture, so destiny is 6,000 years of Olam Hazeh, and then in the 7th millennium, God ceases Olam Hazeh. This world that allows for the coexistence of good and evil has ceased. It stops, and then after, in the 8th millennium, God starts Olam Haba, which is all good and no bad whatsoever. So it's the 6th millennia that the evil is allowed to be around. In the 7th, God ceases it. He stops it. He stops the evil ceases. And the 8th millennia is the new world, right? But the 7 is the cessation of all evil. That's where it ends. So Ramchal points out that that's the way it is in the big picture. It's also that way in a way that the naked eye can't see. Even within time itself, there are these cycles of 6 and 7, it ceases. And what's that? 6, and then in the 7th, it ceases. The week. 6 days we do work. 6 days we are challenged. Just like we have to work, and we have to struggle. Parallel to that also is how there's also spiritual struggle, right? And Shabbos is where Shabbos, cease your work, just enjoy the day. And parallel to that, it's just a day of pure spirituality. And the Zohar says on Shabbos, the Yetzer Hara doesn't reign. It may be around, but it has no turf. Shabbos is a day of God. It's a day of God, and everything that allows for evil to exist and to take up space ceases. Shabbos, it ceases on Shabbos. So the Ramchal, the Derech Hashem says that really this moving, from the 6th millennia to the 7th millennium, right? We do it in small steps on a weekly basis. 6 days we contend with the evil. On the 7th day, God ceases the evil, and it's just a day of pure me'ein olam haba, like we say, Shabbos me'ein olam haba. And then the world, with that cessation of evil, is advanced a little bit further towards tikkun, and then another 6 days, and then ceasing the evil, and that way the world's making progress towards the 7th millennium on a weekly basis, with 6 work days, parallel to the 6th millennia, of where evil is allowed to have turf, and Shabbos parallel to the 7th millennium, when it's all ceased. The evil has ceased, and it's just good, because evil has ceased. Right, so we make progress on a weekly basis. Right. And now this, how the world is all fixed, that's called cosmic tshuva, for reasons I explained in the tshuva series. Right, the whole world is going back to God. God is only, wants to be known as only good. The world that He created allows for evil, so it's called that the world's, separated from God. because the world allows for evil, and when the world becomes in a state that it's only good, so it's called that the world went back to God. The world goes back to God in the 7th millennium, and in the small picture, right, the world goes back to God every Shabbos. The world goes back, and that's why it's the day to contemplate that God created the whole world. The whole world belongs to Him. He's the Creator, because on Shabbos the whole world goes back to Him. Right? And that's also the word Shabbos means cease, but also could be read as Shabbos, the coming back. That the word will be shoved, to go back. On Shabbos the world goes back to God. Right? But Shabbos is part of the process, it's the mini, it's the microcosm of the macro, of how God fixes the whole world, and God will bring the whole world back to Him. That's what's alluded to in Ha'azinu, and that's also the theme of Shabbos itself. Shuva is how we want to bring ourselves back to God. We don't want to wait for God to do it. Right? God at the end will fix everything, but we want to bring ourselves back to God also. Right? And if we rely on God to fix everything, for sure everything will be fixed, but we won't be fixed. Right? The aspect of the I that chose evil will not be fixed. How I corrupted the world will be fixed. How the world was corrupted and perverted, that God will fix. But the I, the concept called the me, right? That, God said, I gave you free will. So the aspect of called you yourself, you corrupted, I gave you free will to ruin yourself. I didn't give you free will to ruin my world I'll fix. You yourself, you ruined. Right? And Shuva is to fix the I, and that's the secret we said in the Shuva series. Why the Rambam speaks about free will in Hilchos Shuva, because Shuva is really for the purpose of fixing the fact that we chose wrongly. Because the world God will fix, but the fact that I chose evil, that I have to fix with Shuva. Shuva is to fix Bechira. Shuva is to fix that I chose wrong. Right? Adam Rishon knew what Shabbos was. Adam Rishon knew what Shabbos was, because Chazal say that even though he did the sin on Friday, the day he was created, God gave him grace over Shabbos, let him stay in Gan Eden over Shabbos. Adam Rishon didn't see darkness till Motzei Shabbos. So Adam Rishon figured out that Shabbos is a graceful day of where God makes everything good. It's a mini of the 7th millennium, of where God ceases the evil and only allows the good to continue. Alright, so Adam Rishon knew about Shabbos. He learned about it from the very first Shabbos. And Adam Rishon himself made Havdalah on Saturday night, when he realized that Shabbos was a special day, and now for the first time he's seeing darkness, and now for the first time he's banished outside of Gan Eden. Right? So Adam Rishon knew all about Shabbos. That's why he also instituted making Havdalah, because he saw the difference between Shabbos and the rest of the week. But he thought Shabbos is what God does. But there's no hope for me, mitzad the fact that I chose evil, and I chose to rebel against God and to listen to the snake. For me, for the aspect called I, there's no tikkun. I know that Shabbos God fixes the world, right? And it's a mini of the 7th millennium. But what about the aspect called me? And then he meets Cain, and Cain said that Cain per se, Cain himself had some type of tikkun. He had a requiem, right? He struck a deal with God, and and he was saved. He wasn't obliterated, right? So from there, Adam Rishon learns that Shuva, but Adam Rishon has a certain insight into Shuva, that Shuva is an extension of the power of Shabbos. Right? Just like Shabbos is a day of rest for God, but God shared the Shabbos with the Jewish people. Even though it belongs to Him, it's His day of rest, He gave it to us also. So as a function of giving us Shabbos, He gave over to us the power of Shabbos, not just that we should rest on Shabbos and enjoy Shabbos, but also the power of Shuva that's built into Shabbos. God shared with us by giving us the Shabbos. Right? How Shabbos is the day of the cessation of evil, because God gave us the Shabbos as a gift. So we have that power of Shabbos within us, and it expresses itself as tshuva. The power of tshuva comes from Shabbos. Shabbos is God put programming in the world that all evil will be corrected and everything will move back to goodness. Evil will be ceased. Man can tap into the power of Shabbos, and when man does tshuva, he's actually tapping into the power of Shabbos. Right? And that's the secret, that the Jewish people could do tshuva at any time for anything. It's a function of the fact that the Jewish people have Shabbos, that they have the power of tshuva. Right? And that's what Adam Rishon realizes. Right? That Shabbos that he knew about, that Shabbos, the the power of Shabbos could be the individual could tap into the power of Shabbos, and with the power of Shabbos do tshuva, and cease the evil in himself and that he created in the world. He could fix the world himself if he does tshuva strong enough. Doesn't have to wait for God to do it, because the power of Shabbos is within us, because God gave us Shabbos. And that's what the Rishon says, Mitzvah Shabbos, the power of Shabbos that I knew about, that the individual could tap into the power of Shabbos, that's where I just learned from Kain, that the individual could tap into the power of Shabbos. Right? To A, save the individual, and B, that even the individual, the power of Shuva, could fix the whole world himself. Doesn't have to wait for God to do it. Right? And that's Shabbos Shuva. Right? That's Shabbos Teshuvah. Right? That this Shabbos is the Shabbos for Yom Kippur, and we tap in. We tap into the power of this Shabbos to help us do Tshuva Shlema in the days that we have left until Yom Kippur and on Yom Kippur itself. Right? This Shabbos, all Shabbos facilitates tshuva. All Shabbos, facilitates the cessation of evil, right, and fixing the whole world. And this Shabbos in particular, that's before Yom Kippur, we were supposed to tap into this and siphon from Shabbos the power to do tshuva shlema in the days we have left. And that's why, by no coincidence, this Shabbos is also Parshas Ha'azinu, which most expresses the concept of Shabbos being a mini of destiny, because Shiras Hazino alludes to the whole course of destiny. Shabbos is a mini of destiny, where the evil will cease at the end of the 6th millennium, and the 7th millennium only the good continues, right? And Shabbos is a mini of that. That's what's spoken about in Hazino, and Shabbos is a mini of that. And with this, Shabbos has a special zgula that we could siphon from it the power to do tshuva shlema in the upcoming Yom Kippur Be'ez Hashem.